Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. In today's video, we are going to talk through Predictably Irrational by Dan, published in 2009. In this book, the author shares his journey into the field of behavioral economics and decision-making. He starts by discussing how his own personal experience of a traumatic injury led him to question human behavior and motivations. Through his research, he explores why we make irrational decisions, such as failing to stick to a diet or buying unnecessary items. The author also examines the impact of external factors, such as the cost or perceived value of a product or action, on our decision-making process. He highlights the implications of understanding these irrational tendencies, from personal life choices to broader societal issues like health insurance or workplace honesty. Ultimately, the author aims to challenge our assumptions about rationality and provide insights into how to avoid making repeated mistakes in decision-making. In this book, Dan explores the concept of irrationality and how it affects our everyday actions and decisions. He argues that our irrational behaviors are not random, but predictable, and understanding them can lead to better decision-making and improved quality of life. The author conducts experiments to examine human behavior and extrapolates the findings to various contexts. He emphasizes the importance of considering how these principles apply to our own lives and suggests that readers pause after each chapter to reflect on the implications and potential changes they can make based on the new understanding. He uses examples such as pricing strategies, menu design, and house hunting to illustrate the concept of relativity and how it influences our decision-making process. Dan's book discusses the concept of relativity in decision-making and its impact on our happiness. It begins by exploring the choice between visiting Rome or Paris, and how the addition of a third option, Rome without a free breakfast, influences our perception of the original choices. The decoy effect is then explained through an experiment involving photographs and attractiveness, where participants are more likely to choose the regular version of a person over the distorted version when presented with a decoy option. He further explores how relativity affects decision-making in consumer choices and salary comparisons, and suggests methods to mitigate its negative effects by consciously choosing smaller circles of comparison. Anchoring affects our decision-making and willingness to pay for products. A study conducted by researchers Tversky and Kahneman is introduced, where participants were asked to make a decision based on the price difference of a pen and a suit. The study found that people were more likely to take a 15-minute trip to save $7 on a pen, but not on a suit. This showcases how our decisions are influenced by relative comparisons. Dan then goes on to explain how our initial impressions and decisions, known as anchors, can have a long-term effect on our willingness to pay for products. He provides an example of an experiment conducted with MBA students at MIT, where their social security numbers served as anchors and influenced their bids for certain products. Once an initial price is established in our minds, it shapes our willingness to pay for related products. Anchoring bias is a psychological phenomenon wherein our initial encounter with a price or value becomes our reference point for all future decisions regarding that item. This anchor influences not only our immediate buying decision, but also subsequent decisions. For example, if we buy a high-definition television for $3,000, that price becomes the anchor for all future TV purchases. We tend to compare other TVs to that price, even if it's on sale. Anchoring affects various aspects of our lives, including housing prices when moving to a new city. We tend to remain anchored to the prices we paid in our old city, regardless of the housing market in the new location. The first anchor we encounter has a lasting impact and influences future decisions. This is demonstrated by an experiment involving annoying sounds, where participants' initial anchor price affected their subsequent bids. Once we establish an anchor, it becomes difficult to break free from its influence. Anchoring can lead to the formation of habits and affect our decision-making process. For instance, when we start buying expensive coffee at Starbucks, it becomes a habit, and we continue to justify the prices even if it doesn't make logical sense. The company successfully separated itself from other coffee shops by creating a unique ambiance and offering different drink options. The author also describes an experiment involving poetry readings, where students were asked if they would pay or be paid to attend. The results showed that the initial anchor, whether they would pay or be paid, influence their subsequent bids for a spot at the poetry reading. Our lives are shaped by arbitrary choices and encourages readers to question their habits and decisions. He also challenges traditional economic theories by highlighting the role of anchoring in determining market prices and consumer demand. Dan also explores the concept of free and its influence on human behavior and decision-making. He conducted an experiment involving the sale of chocolates at different prices, including a free option. The results showed that customers were significantly more likely to choose the free chocolate option, even when the relative price difference between the options remained the same. Humans are inherently afraid of loss, and that the allure of free stems from the absence of a perceived downside or risk. This behavioral response to free items can lead individuals to make irrational decisions and overlook better alternatives. The chapter concludes by highlighting the potential pitfalls of free offerings and the need for careful evaluation when considering such deals. Trick or treating on Halloween, where children are presented with choices between different-sized candy bars in exchange for their Hershey's Kisses. It is found that the allure of getting something for free often causes people to make irrational decisions. The power of free extends beyond monetary transactions and can be seen in various scenarios. For example, offering free shipping versus a small fee can impact consumer behavior. Zero-cost effect applies to other aspects of life, such as time and food purchases. The concept of free can be leveraged in business and social policy to draw crowds, increase sales, and drive desired behaviors. The author goes on to explain the difference between social norms and market norms and how they affect our behavior and motivations. Social norms are based on friendly requests and don't require immediate reciprocity, while market norms are based on exchanges and prompt payments. An experiment where participants are given monetary rewards for completing a task was conducted by Dan. Those who were paid a higher amount worked harder, while those who were paid a lower amount or nothing at all worked less. Interestingly, when participants were given a small gift instead of money, they worked just as hard as those who were paid a higher amount. However, when the gift was explicitly priced, participants worked less, indicating that market norms had entered the situation. Thinking about money can influence our behavior, making us more self-reliant and less likely to help others. Social exchanges and market exchanges operate in two different worlds, and applying market norms to social relationships can disrupt and damage those relationships. Dan presents an experiment conducted in a daycare center as an example, where the introduction of a fine for late pickups disrupted the social contract between teachers and parents, leading to a decline in punctuality even after the fine was removed. Dan's book also explores the implications of social and market norms in personal relationships, business interactions, and employee-employer relationships. It emphasizes the importance of maintaining social norms in certain contexts to foster loyalty, motivation, and productivity. The writer discusses the influence of arousal on decision-making, specifically in regards to sexual arousal. A study conducted with male college students to understand how their attitudes could change when they are in an impassioned state. The participants were asked a series of questions while in a state of sexual arousal, such as whether they would enjoy sex with someone they hated or if they would slip a drug to increase the chance of having sex. The results showed that when aroused, participants were more inclined to engage in risky behaviors that they would not typically consider in a non-aroused state. This study highlights the importance of understanding the impact of arousal on decision-making, particularly in relation to sexual behavior. The study concluded that individuals consistently underestimate the effect of passion on their behavior and fail to understand themselves in an emotionally charged state. Dan's book mentions the importance of recognizing and managing the influence of arousal on decision-making, especially in areas such as safe sex and driving. Procrastination and the lack of self-control often leads to delayed gratification. The author first highlights the decline in the personal savings rate in America and explores the reasons behind it, including rampant consumerism and the explosion of consumer credit. Procrastination is rooted in the conflict between long-term goals and immediate gratification. To better understand procrastination, the author conducted experiments with students to determine the most effective way to combat procrastination. In one class, students were given complete flexibility in choosing their own deadlines, while in another class, there were no deadlines at all until the end of the semester. The third class had firm deadlines imposed by the professor. The results showed that the class with the externally imposed deadlines performed the best, while the class with self-imposed deadlines performed the worst. The author suggests that although many people struggle with self-control and procrastination, providing tools for pre-commitment, such as externally imposed deadlines, can help individuals overcome these challenges. The author further explores the potential application of pre-commitment mechanisms in other areas of life, such as healthcare and personal finance. The idea of a self-control credit card would allow users to set their own spending limits and penalties for going over those limits. The author describes pitching this idea to a major bank, who seemed interested but never followed up. The author believes that a self-control credit card could be a successful business venture, as it would appeal to consumers looking to manage their spending and save more money. He also explores the concept of the endowment effect, which suggests that people tend to value things more once they own them. Ownership affects our decision-making. There are 3 irrational quirks in our human nature when it comes to ownership. First, we fall in love with what we already have, leading us to assign a higher value to our possessions. Second, we focus on what we may lose rather than what we may gain, making us reluctant to sell or let go of our belongings. Third, we assume that others will perceive the value of our possessions in the same way we do, leading to unrealistic expectations in transactions. Ownership extends beyond material things and applies to points of view and ideologies. Being aware of these quirks can help us make better decisions about ownership and avoid unnecessary attachments. Dan discusses the tendency of humans to keep doors open, even at the expense of their own happiness and success. He starts by giving examples of a student faced with choosing between 2 majors and a girl torn between 2 boyfriends. The author then describes an experiment called the door game that was conducted to study this behavior. Participants were given the opportunity to click on different doors, with each click earning them money. The experiment revealed that participants who constantly switched doors and tried to keep all options open ended up making less money compared to those who stayed in one room. The compulsion to keep options open is rooted in the fear of missing out or losing something valuable. This behavior can lead to spreading oneself too thin and missing important opportunities. The author discusses the concept of closing doors and making decisions. Having a clear deadline or time constraint can help us prioritize and make the most of our time. He encourages readers to consciously close some doors, particularly those that are not aligned with their goals or values. While choosing between 2 similar options should be simple, it is often challenging due to our irrational compulsion to keep doors open. Dan also explores the effect of expectations on perception, using an experiment with beer tasting to illustrate how people's expectations can shape their experiences and preferences. If people are informed about a distasteful ingredient in a product, they are more likely to agree that it is distasteful, regardless of their actual experience. In an experiment conducted with coffee, participants were more likely to have positive opinions about the coffee when it was presented in fancy containers, even though the taste of the coffee did not change. Similarly, in another experiment with beer, participants who were told about the presence of vinegar after tasting the beer actually liked it more than those who were informed beforehand. This suggests that our expectations before and after an experience can shape our sensory perceptions. Dan's book also mentions the power of presentation in enhancing the experience of food and beverages, and how marketing can influence our enjoyment through creating expectations. A study on Coke and Pepsi found that brand associations activated higher-order brain mechanisms and influenced preferences. Dan discusses the connection between the frontal part of the brain and the pleasure center, noting that associations and expectations play a significant role in our preferences and enjoyment of certain things. He also examines how stereotypes shape our perceptions and behavior, highlighting the influence of stereotypes on both individuals' reactions and people's behavior towards stereotyped groups. The book presents experiments that demonstrate how expectations can affect behavior, such as participants interrupting conversations based on primed words. It also discusses the impact of expectations in medical procedures, presenting studies on placebo surgeries and their effectiveness compared to actual procedures. Placebos can be powerful. Beliefs and conditioning can influence our response to them. It mentions historical examples of bizarre placebos, such as Egyptian mummy powder and the use of fresh corpses for cure-all medications. Modern examples includes the placebo effect in surgical procedures and the efficacy of antidepressants in brain surgery for Parkinson's disease. Dan then delves into the impact of price on our perception of the effectiveness of medications. He mentions an experiment where participants were given a placebo painkiller, and the results showed that the perception of pain relief was higher when the price of the placebo was higher. Furthermore, similar findings in a study on cold medications and a study on a beverage demonstrates that price affects the placebo effect in consumer products as well. Perception of value, whether through pricing or hype, can affect the efficacy of a product or treatment. Dan also explores the role of placebos in healthcare and the difficult trade-offs that arise when considering their use. He questions whether it is right for physicians to prescribe treatments they know are placebos, and whether indulging people's irrational beliefs in healthcare is worth the increased costs. He highlights the need for more placebo experiments in medicine to determine the effectiveness of various procedures and treatments. The author also shares a personal experience with a treatment that turned out to be ineffective, emphasizing the importance of conducting research to avoid unnecessary suffering. Dan's book then shifts to discussing the prevalence of dishonesty in various aspects of society, such as workplace theft, fraudulent insurance claims, and tax evasion. The author describes an experiment conducted at Harvard Business School to test the propensity for cheating among students, finding that many honest people will cheat when given the opportunity. Dan discusses the prevalence of dishonesty and deception in society, citing examples such as credit card companies raising interest rates, airlines seeking government bailouts, and schools allowing soda machines despite their negative effects. He explores the limitations of external measures, such as government regulations and ethics reforms, in preventing dishonesty. An experiment conducted by the author, where participants were asked to take a math test and had the opportunity to cheat. Participants who recalled the 10 Commandments before the test did not cheat at all, while those who recalled books they read in high school cheated to some extent. Moral reminders, whether religious or secular, can effectively decrease dishonesty. Incorporating an honor code or oath in different areas of society could promote honesty. The writer emphasizes the importance of honesty for the economic power and reputation of a nation like the United States. He also suggests that cheating is easier when it is one step removed from cash, using an experiment involving tokens and money to illustrate this. The chapter concludes by acknowledging the need to prevent situations where personal financial gain conflicts with moral standards in order to combat dishonesty. The author discusses that dishonesty can be influenced by the use of non-monetary currencies. He highlights various examples of dishonest practices, such as insurance fraud, returning worn clothing, and inflating expense reports. He also shares a personal experience of someone hacking into their Skype account and charging their PayPal account without feeling morally reprehensible. Non-monetary currencies make it easier for people to justify dishonest actions, as there is no direct exchange of cash involved. Even good, moral people can be influenced by the non-monetary nature of transactions and engage in dishonest behaviors. The author then discusses the experiments which challenge the assumption that humans are rational beings. He describes an experiment conducted at a brewery where participants were asked to choose a beer and rate their satisfaction with it. It was found that when people ordered out loud in sequence, they chose different types of beer to demonstrate their uniqueness, even if it wasn't their preferred choice. This led to a decrease in their satisfaction with their selection. The author also mentions a correlation between the need for uniqueness and the tendency to choose a different beverage. The chapter concludes with a discussion on the limitations of standard economics and the emergence of behavioral economics, which acknowledges human irrationality and provides opportunities for improving decision-making. Behavioral economists believe that people are influenced by factors such as context effects, emotions, and irrationality. However, this realization also provides opportunities for improvement. By understanding our systematic mistakes, we can develop strategies and tools to make better decisions and improve overall well-being. For example, behavioral economics offers methods like the Save More Tomorrow mechanism, which helps individuals save more for retirement by increasing their contribution rates with future salary raises. These approaches provide free lunches in the sense that they offer benefits to all parties involved. Dan discusses the role of social norms in various aspects of our lives. He explores how mixing social and monetary norms can lead to strange and undesirable outcomes. For example, the act of giving gifts is financially inefficient, as the recipient may not value the gift as much as its cost. However, giving gifts is an important social lubricant and helps create and maintain relationships. In the workplace, emphasizing market norms, such as explicitly stating the financial value of employee benefits, can erode pride and motivation, negatively affecting the employer-employee relationship. He discusses the addictive nature of checking email and how it can distract us from important tasks. He also references B.F. Skinner's concept of variable schedules of reinforcement and how it relates to email addiction. Dan's book discusses the variable schedule of reinforcement and its role in motivating people. It compares this concept to gambling, where the unpredictability of winning keeps people hooked. The author then relates this concept to checking emails, explaining that the excitement of receiving a desired email keeps us addicted to checking our inboxes. To combat this addiction, the author suggests turning off automatic email notifications and using filters to prioritize important messages. He then shares a personal story about their experience with interferon treatment for hepatitis, highlighting the importance of delayed gratification and self-control. By associating the injection with the reward of watching movies, the author was able to continue the treatment. This concept of pairing something we love with something good for us can also be applied to other areas of life to improve decision-making and overcome self-destructive behaviors. The writer explores the human tendency to overvalue what we own and the impact of expectations on our perception and enjoyment of things. The author shares personal anecdotes about remodeling their house and trying to sell it, highlighting how their own biases impacted their view of the changes they made. A Washington Post experiment involving violinist Joshua Bell performing in a busy metro station, revealing how the environment and expectations influence our perception of art. Being aware of these biases can help us listen to advice and feedback from others more effectively, and encourages a more objective approach to experiences in order to reduce disappointment and appreciate things for what they truly are. Positive expectations can enhance our enjoyment of things. The book then transitions to a discussion of the subprime mortgage crisis and the role of irrational behavior in the economy. The author criticizes the traditional economic model that assumes rationality and argues for the incorporation of human behavior and psychology into economic models. He suggests that understanding human behavior is crucial in preventing similar economic crises in the future. The author also highlights the importance of considering real, common, and irrational behavior when making recommendations for policies and practices. Instead of figuring out the optimal amount, people focus on the maximum amount they can borrow, which is typically determined by their monthly income. This approach transforms the question from one about the ideal amount to borrow to one about the largest amount a bank will lend. However, these are not equivalent questions. The author argues that banks should have recognized that individuals are not capable of calculating the right amount to borrow and should have provided guidance. Additionally, the author highlights the need for regulations to prevent individuals from borrowing more than they can afford. The excerpt also explores conflicts of interest and rational decision-making in the context of the financial crisis. While bankers had financial incentives to view mortgage-backed securities and other complex financial products as innovative and lucrative investments, they also had a tendency to see what they wanted to see due to the inherent fuzziness and opacity of these instruments. This combination of conflicts of interest and the ability to reshape reality led to deception and ultimately the financial meltdown. The only solution is to eliminate conflicts of interest and create a financial system free of such biases. However, the author acknowledges that creating and implementing such regulations may be complex and costly, and suggests that individuals take a proactive step in scrutinizing their relationships with professionals who may have conflicts of interest. The author also discusses the planning fallacy and its impact on our budgets, as well as the exploitative practices of the financial industry. This leads to poor financial decisions and reliance on banking and insurance institutions. These institutions take advantage of this fallacy by imposing large penalties for unexpected financial events, causing individuals to suffer financially. Individuals should save more money for unexpected expenses to overcome this fallacy. Additionally, punitive financial practices should be controlled to alleviate the burden on those with fewer resources. The writer also highlights the importance of trust in the economy, stating that the erosion of trust in the banking system contributed to the 2008 economic crisis. He proposes that rebuilding trust is crucial for the success of economic measures taken by central banks. He highlights the need for banks to eliminate conflicts of interest and adopt transparency in order to regain trust. The psychological fallout from the lack of understanding in the financial markets is also addressed, with a comparison to an experiment on dogs and learned helplessness. The globalization of markets may reduce diversity and financial innovation, and Dan proposes that multiple independent markets would be more efficient and robust. The debate surrounding executive salaries in the banking industry is explored, with experiments conducted to examine the relationship between large bonuses and job performance. They conducted experiments in which participants were offered different levels of bonuses and found that higher bonuses did not necessarily lead to better performance. In fact, the group offered the highest bonus performed worse than the other two groups in every task. Financial rewards can be a double-edged sword, as they can motivate people but also hinder performance when they become too large. The writer also explores the impact of social pressure on performance, highlighting that being observed by others can actually impair performance. He challenges the assumption that more money always equals better performance, and argues that compensation is a complex issue influenced by various psychological factors. They also critique the reliance on rational economics in designing policies and institutions, advocating for a multidisciplinary approach that incorporates psychology, sociology, and philosophy. The author suggests that conducting experiments in public policy, business, and personal lives is necessary to improve outcomes for society as a whole. While some conditions may result in worse outcomes, there are also those that lead to better outcomes. The ultimate benefit lies in the long-term adoption of better programs. Despite the complexities and challenges involved, the author believes that embracing the complexity of human behavior and considering our flaws and limitations can lead to the creation of a much better world. This, according to the author, is the true promise of behavioral economics. Thank you so much for watching this video. Your support means the world to us. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We'll see you in the next video.